Hello and welcome to a new season of In Touch with Durham County. I'm your host, Deborah Craig-Ray, Chief Communications Officer. Today, our show will share all things elections. Joining us is the knowledgeable leader who has all the answers to your 2024 election questions, Derek Bowens, Durham County's Director of Elections. In this half hour, he will talk to us all about this fall's general election, who's up and down the ballot, and important changes you need to know if you haven't voted for a while. Derek also will share information about his new office location, a new app his team has designed that will help us with the voting process. Welcome, Derek.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here, Deborah.
It's been a while.
It has. It has. Always great to be back in the seat.
And I appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Of course. Of course.
You ready to get going?
I am.
Okay.
I am.
Well, for those of folks who don't know, tell us a little bit about what is it to be Durham County's elections director?
Well, it's a lot, especially in presidential years. We're obviously responsible under the supervision of a board of elections to oversee elections administration in Durham County for over 240,000 registered voters. So day to day, preparing polling places, getting a lot of voters registered to vote, preparing early voting sites, making sure ballots are accurately configured, a number of things, all of it leading, of course, to a great experience for our voters here in Durham.
So you don't have very much to do. No. Okay. So we know that November 5th is the general election, and I also know that over the years, a lot of people take advantage of early voting, which you mentioned. When does early voting begin?
So early voting begins October 17th at 12 locations throughout the county. Of course, that full list of sites can be found at our website at decovotes.com. During weekdays, Monday through Friday, we'll be open from 8 a.m. until 7:30 p.m. at all of those sites. The first two Saturdays from 8 a.m. until 7:30 p.m. Those two Sundays, 2 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. And, of course, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. on the final Saturday, which is required by statute, of course.
Now, I've been doing this a little while, and it seems like every major election we have some court decision that kind of upends your normal efforts. And I think this time we had a situation with a candidate who wanted to get on the ballot, then wanted to get off the ballot, and of course it ended up costing you some time and money. Talk about that.
Yeah, so we did have a candidate for the We the People party, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., that petitioned the State Board of Elections to be removed from the ballot. And of course, the timing wasn't the best given that counties in North Carolina cumulatively had printed 1.7 million ballots across the state. So the State Board of Elections decided actually not to remove him from the ballot due to some statutory discretion regarding timing needed to reprint ballots. And of course, by law, in federal general elections, absentee by mail ballots must be sent 60 days prior to the election, North Carolina being the first in the nation to send out ballots. So the candidate, of course, appealed that decision to Superior Court, or filed a lawsuit in Superior Court. Superior Court actually affirmed the State Board of Elections decision, but then, of course, there is an appeals process. So the candidate appealed that to the NC Court of Appeals. They reversed the State Board of Elections decision. And then, of course, the state appealed to the NC Supreme Court, and they affirmed the lower court. So because of that, all ballots that were printed had to be reprinted. In Durham County, it would net us, or will net us, $49,000 beyond what was already budgeted for and provided to us in appropriations by the commissioners. And of course, it also extended the absentee by mail deadline in terms of when we're required to mail those. So military and overseas ballots, we sent those out this past Friday, 9/20, and then we'll send out our civilian ballots on 9/24 in compliance with State Board of Elections guidance as a result of those rulings.
Yeah, so time and money.
Time and money.
So let's talk about voter ID. Of course, voter ID is a requirement of our state, and I know there are some people who probably haven't voted in a while. Talk about that.
Yeah, so one of the things I would certainly advocate for is the Board of Elections issues free IDs to voters that do not have them. That is a charge on County Board of Elections as required under the law. It's completely free to voters as long as they come in and fill out an application with the appropriate information. There are many different types of IDs that are eligible, effective with this law beginning in 2023. per a constitutional amendment of the voters of North Carolina and subsequent litigation leading us to that point. But anywhere from an NC driver's license to approved student IDs, employee IDs, veteran ID cards, tribal enrollment cards, passports, the number of IDs goes on and on. When someone presents to vote, the election official, of course, will ask for that ID. And again, there's a number of exceptions. I would advise folks to check out our website at Deco Votes for the full details. But they'll ask for that ID. They'll conduct what's called a reasonable resemblance evaluation. Does the picture on the ID look like the person standing in front of me? And is the name on the ID the same or substantially equivalent to the name in the electronic poll book? And there's a bunch of considerations. You'll notice when you go to the check-in station, each poll worker will have what we call the photo ID evaluation guide, which Durham County has created to help guide them through the statutory process, and of course working to err on the side of the voter where permissible by law, and to make sure people are given the opportunity to vote. If folks don't have an ID, they can vote a provisional ballot and file a photo ID exception form. There are many reasons why someone may not have an ID. So there's a number of rules around that. We're happy to answer any questions and, of course, want to direct people to our website to get the most accurate information.
Excellent. Now, I know, we're in a college town. We've got two wonderful universities, North Carolina Central University and Duke University. So what about the students that come in from out of state? Can they vote here?
Absolutely. So there is a provision of law that allows students that are coming here for college purposes or university purposes to register in the college town if their intent once they graduate is not to return to their home state or residence. And of course, most students don't know where they're going to go after they graduate, so many of them will register here. So that is permissible. We do have we have acceptable IDs for both campuses. At NCCU, the student ID is acceptable. At Duke, both the student ID and student voter ID card is acceptable for presentation to comply with the photo ID requirement.
Okay, very good, very good. So one other thing I did want to touch on, the 17-year-olds who were able to vote in the primary earlier this year, but they will turn 18 by November. So we have some communication for them as well?
Absolutely. So we encourage those students, as with the primary, that if they'll be 18 by the date of the general election, they'll be able to participate like any other voter as permitted under North Carolina law. We have a voter registration page on our website that also goes over this process. And we also encourage any students that are eligible or 17-year-olds that are interested in working in the polling place. There's a student election assistant application process where you can get paid.
Wow.
And we'd love to have you. You can find that on our website as well.
That's outstanding. See, you can get paid to vote and paid to work to vote.
Work.
Yes. So what happens if a person shows up to vote without the ID?
So if someone presents to vote without the acceptable ID, there's a couple of options. One, the election official will see if they have an alternative type of ID if they present one that is deemed unacceptable. And then there's the other scenario is they outright don't have one. All of those voters will be directed to what we call the help desk, in which case they will be offered a guide that actually tells them, hey, you can file a photo ID exception form if any of these situations apply. If they file that form, sign it, they would put that with their provisional ballot. That goes before the Board of Elections. And unless the board finds, and it's quite a high threshold to get to this point, unless they find what we call a finding of falsity within the statute with regard to that declaration, then that provisional ballot would count, assuming all other requirements for registering and voting are met.
Okay, very good. Very good. Well, we've already covered a great deal, and we've got a few things to go forward in our conversation. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with our Durham County Director of Elections, Deborah Bowens, and we'll see you on the other side.
This election, whether you're voting in person or by mail, North Carolina voters will be asked to show photo ID. You can show your driver's license, but other IDs will be accepted. Don't have a photo ID? Don't worry. Free IDs are available at these locations. You can still vote without an ID, either with a form explaining why you can't show ID, or by voting and bringing your ID later to your County Board of Elections. Make your voice heard and bring it. Your ID, your vote. Learn more at bringitinc.gov.
Hey there, Durham County. Welcome to our guide on the Durham County 2025 Real Property Reappraisal. General Reappraisal updates the value of properties to reflect their current market worth. It doesn't include items like boats and cars or other non-real estate personal property. North Carolina law requires reappraisal every 8 years to ensure fair tax distribution. Durham County is moving to a 4-year reappraisal process to keep property taxes consistent and predictable, avoiding large jumps in your tax bill. The last reappraisal was in 2019, so it's time for an update in January 2025. The process involves reviewing property sales, building costs, and income data to determine accurate market values. It's like detective work for real estate. Our team analyzes recent property sales to understand market trends and assess the current value of properties. We also look at building costs to determine the value of new constructions and improvements on properties. Income data from rental and commercial properties helps us evaluate the income-generating potential of these properties. During the first quarter of 2025, you'll receive your new assessed property value. If you disagree with your new property value, you can file an appeal online on our website. You might be wondering, how will this affect my tax bill? It depends on tax rates set by local jurisdictions, such as the City of Durham and Durham County. Your bill might go up, down, or stay the same. Thank you for learning more about the 2025 General Reappraisal process. If you have any questions or need more information, visit our website or give us a call. We're here to help. See you next time.
Welcome back to In Touch. We're talking with our Durham County Director of Elections, Bowens. In our first segment, we covered key dates, early voting, new rules, and more. But one big question we have not explored yet: which offices are on the ballot, Derek? And I know it's a long list, so I'm just going to ask you to highlight them. We're going to put them on the screen.
Okay, yeah. So of course, the top of the ticket is President of the United States. We've got governor. We've got several council of state offices, of course, local offices, including Durham County Commissioners, Register of Deeds, Soil and Water Conservation District, a constitutional amendment, and also, depending on what municipality you live in, there's several local bond referendums. So a lot of things on the ballot. All ballots are 17 inches and two-sided. So, of course, we encourage our voters to flip it. Flip your ballot. We actually have a campaign out on radio and also on social media encouraging voters to flip their ballot. It is two-sided in every case, and there are a lot of contests.
So you heard that. You got to be very careful with that really long ballot. Now, here's a question a lot of people ask. Who decides the order of names on a ballot?
Well, it depends on the office. That's a loaded question. But as far as the top of the ticket, which I think is where the most interest is for president, that is actually randomly selected by the State Board of Elections. So there is no group of people that just decide in a back room. It is a random process, and whatever letter is selected, the names start from there. And then it goes back to the beginning. So you'll see if it starts at D, then D would be the first. Anybody with the last name D would be the first name on the ballot, and so forth and so on.
Okay. Well, that's certainly a question that's come up a few times. Now, your staff recently relocated from downtown Durham to a new location. Talk about that location. Are you happy to be there? And what are some of the features?
Well, we're very excited, and I do want to thank our County Board of Commissioners and also our county manager for making that investment into a new consolidated facility for the Board of Elections. It's very good not to be operating in a bifurcated system to be all under one roof. We are incredibly excited. In addition to just being in one place, which makes things more efficient and easier to operate in general, and it services our voters better. I can make an argument for that. The security protocols that are in place, given the intense environment that we are currently under as election officials. So we have duress buttons, security cameras, secured parking, camera badge access, a separate mail room with a separate exhaust system for potentially hazardous letters and materials that we, as you've seen in the news recently, several state election offices have received. And last year, earlier this year, fentanyl-laced letters went to several jurisdictions across the country to try to intimidate election officials from doing their work. So we're very excited about the investment. We're excited about the security protocols that have been put in place at the building to protect workers, but to also protect voters. So we're really excited about it. It's coming along. We're currently in the first phase of the building, and we expect to get access to the second phase mid-October or early October. So we're excited. We're very excited.
Yeah, very different from the last one.
Yes, very much so. Very much so.
So another enhancement that you've done, you've come up with a new app called, I think, Deco Votes to help us do a better job of knowing where the lines are, when to vote, and that kind of thing. Talk about that app.
This is a vision that has been realized after several years of working with our IT department. So we developed what we wanted to see. We actually designed it in-house, and of course they put it all together for us. So we really wanted to put something together and to be a trailblazer in North Carolina, being the first county to implement something such as this, to give voters a place where they can go where they often are, which is their cell phones. So we developed this app, which is a one-stop shop to find out where you need to vote, early voting wait times, your polling place, of course, on election day, to see if you're registered, how to look up and see your voter history, to see sample ballots, to get notifications. One of the things that we can do through the app, if individuals opt in once they download, is they can say they'd like push notifications to their phones. So we've been able to integrate that app with our Rave alert system that the county uses to do emergency messaging, to send out notifications, say when sample ballots come out or when election day hits. It also has a countdown of important dates, so you can see when that is upcoming. So we're really excited about that. So far, we've had over 2,000 downloads from iPhone users, and we've had over 200 downloads for Android users. So we hope to continue to get the word out on that app and to really use it to communicate with our residents.
Well, do you need more volunteers?
I dare not say no, but I think that we're certainly in a good place. For election day, we need over 700 workers. For early voting, we need 400 to 500 workers. And we still do have some vacancies, so we certainly encourage anyone that's eligible to visit our website at decovotes.com, go to that precinct officials page and apply, and we'll communicate with you as to the need that we have.
Well, how would you say that this election is different from 2020?
A lot different. I would say, one, we're not dealing with the global pandemic. Of course, there's still some residual issues there with COVID, and people still experience COVID, and it's still very real. And we want to be mindful of that in the voting process. But that was a huge anomaly, I would say, in terms of how we've executed elections in the past. So much so, in 2020, we had 47,000 people vote absentee by mail, which was historic. This election, we probably won't even get to 10,000 return ballots. So a lot of that will funnel over to early voting and election day. So I would say that's the biggest thing. But also the ecosystem of election administration has changed significantly since 2020 with regard to our security posture. A lot of the rhetoric that is out there, top and bottom, is harmful. And so it can intimidate our election officials from not wanting to work. So, some of the things we've had to implement there is using information from the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA. De-escalation videos are now a part of our training. We're also going to be implementing emergency alert badges for our chief judges and site coordinators. We've implemented a GPS system that will allow us to track the location of critical supplies every 3 seconds. We've also implemented a returns escort when our chief judges and site coordinators return ballots and results at the end of election night. In addition to being able to track them on that GPS device, we're going to have a returns escort of the opposite party actually follow them back to the facility. So we've had some form of these things in place previously, but now it's way more illuminated, way more robust, and it is necessary given the actual threat environment for election officials, and one would argue voters. Even in the primary, we had an individual show up to the polling place after the polls closed. Of course, in North Carolina, by statute, the polls close at 7:30 p.m. But if you're in line by 7:30 p.m., of course, you'll be eligible to vote. This individual didn't make it in time. And they got so upset with our election official that they said, if I can't vote with a ballot, I'll vote with a bullet. And so that required us to, of course, initiate our emergency protocols with the Office of Emergency Services, our great sheriff's department, and we were able to respond to that appropriately without incident. But the security landscape, I would say, is the biggest thing that has changed, and we're responding appropriately, and the county commissioners have invested funding to put their money where their mouth is.
Absolutely. I mean, we all know how important this is. And, I would just say for myself, I've been to national meetings where certainly election security was top of mind. And I've sat in on workshops with CISA and others just talking about how important it is that we all coordinate and collaborate in this environment. You're absolutely correct. So let me just remind folks, what are the key dates that they need to remember as we go forward?
So a lot of key dates. Of course, October 11th is that voter registration deadline. Early voting, which we encourage our residents to use early voting. Again, in 2020, 65% of our residents voted early. That starts on October 17th. It ends on November 2nd. Election day is November 5th. The deadline to request an absentee by mail ballot is October 29th. Those ballots must be returned by the close of the polls on Election Day. All absentee ballots must be returned by the close of the polls. There is no extension or postmarking for mail ballots, and that was, of course, overturned under a 2023 session law or Senate Bill 747. And then, of course, we canvass that election on November 15th, and we plan to have a very successful canvass in our county.
Absolutely. One thing I didn't touch on, the absentee ballot, I think there's some changes about how those are filled out. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so one of the things, of course, one of the biggest changes is the ballot has to be returned to us by 7:30 p.m. on Election Day. But the standard things, right, you have to sign it, attest that you are the person signing that ballot application. You have to have 2 witnesses or 1 public notary. If you have someone assisting you with the ballot, that person also has to sign a voter assistant certification. And then, of course, you have to provide a photocopy of an acceptable ID. And that goes in a clear plastic pouch that is attached to that absentee container return envelope. And individuals that cannot provide that, they're able, just as with in-person voters, sign a photo ID exception form. One of the reasons is they don't have access to a photocopier.
Right.
So that packet, once fully completed with the ballot enclosed, is returned back to us and is processed as it has been in the past, with a little bit more evaluation in that the board has to consider the photo ID, make sure it's there, and also look at the other required elements.
Well, certainly, we have covered a lot, and your office is responsible for a lot. Can you share with us your wonderful website?
Yes, so decovotes.com, DCOVOTES.com. Please go there. It has all of the information you need about voting, how to download our app to get notifications, become a precinct official, attend board meetings, which are public proceedings. Everything you need is on that site, and if you find something that you think should be there that's not there, we're happy to have that feedback as well and to upgrade that as much as we can.
Okay, well, as we wrap up, is there one final thing you want to leave our voters with?
So I would say, always talk to your county board of elections. You should always start there and end there, and know that the Board of Elections works within the confines of the law as established under North Carolina law and federal law. And we won't go outside of that, because that would be indeed breaking the law. So if you're not sure, come talk to your Board of Elections. We're here. We're ready to respond and defend democracy every day.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you and your wonderful staff for the great work that you do to serve our voters across Durham County.
Thank you so much, Deborah. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Well, we'd like to thank you all for joining us on In Touch with Durham County. We hope you've learned a lot about the elections process, and we'll see you next time on In Touch. Cheers.